Good morning, everyone. My name is Ayelet Biger-Levin, and I am part of the North America chapter of the Global Anti-Scam Alliance. And I'm also a host of the Scam Rangers podcast. And as part of the podcast, I really showcase scam fighters in the industry. We talk a lot about public and private partnership, commercial sector, and government. But I think this industry is also powered by true scam fighters that are grassroots activists. And our panel today consists of three of them. I would like to introduce Ken Palla, Ken Westbrook, and Paul Raffile. These, I'm sure some of you know them, or most of you know them, because they're very, very vocal and active in the industry. And they track closely what is happening and the progress that all of us are making. And they consistently share their thoughts and ideas with the industry. And I think a lot of the action is powered by the drive that they bring to the table. So I'm excited to host this panel today and talk a little bit about what we should continue to do and what we should start doing. Initially, we wanted to call this panel Simple Solutions, Big Impact. But when we started talking, we said nothing is simple. So we changed the name to Urgent Solutions, Big Impact. What do we need to do now to drive change? So Ken Palla will focus on finance, telcos, what is happening on the state level. Ken Westbrook will focus on private-public partnerships. And then Paul will talk about tech and social media companies. So what can we do? Each of the presenters will start by talking a little bit about what they've done in the past year, and then they'll talk about what they think needs to be done in each and every sector. So we'll start with you, Ken.
Okay, thank you. Well, good morning, everyone. So what have I done in the past year? I do a lot of writing and research, and so I've spent a lot of time looking at what's happening around the world for consumer scams, for reimbursement and controls. So I've spent a lot of time in, obviously, the UK, Australia, but other countries, Singapore, the Philippines, Vietnam, and other places. And I also have written some papers, so if actually at the Outlook booth, there's a presentation, document I've done on scam controls around the world. There's like a list of 70 scam controls. That's one of the ones I've done. I've written reports on actually what happens in all these countries for reimbursement and what's really happening. So it becomes very informative as we try to figure out what we do here in the United States and Canada. We need to understand what's happening around the world. So that's kind of what I've been doing. And so with this, I see I've got a green arrow, so that's a good sign for me. So what we're going to talk about first are the financial institutions' best practices, and this is about prevention. And this is really a journey that banks will have to go through. Some are in the middle of doing it, some are planning on doing it, but it is a journey that has to be done. And one of the things I want to highlight is from KeyBank, Ben Hirsch is here. So Ben, if you could stand up. Ben is a banker going through this journey, and this is a chance for you when you're here to talk to Ben, understand what it's like for a real banker to go through the journey I'm talking about. So thanks, Ben, for volunteering to have people talk with you. But I did talk to him beforehand. Okay, so as we look at this is a list that I consider to be kind of the best practices. And it's something that if the Federal Reserve were to put something out about a guidance or a best practice, or the FFIEC that we used to have before for online security, these are the things that I think would be on there. And they're really pretty straightforward. So we talk first of all about tracking consumer scams. As a financial institution, you have to know what the impact is to your customers. And this information is key to help get the C-suite aware of the problem at your financial institution. It's like step number one. The second one that I would do, and I'm going to go a little bit out of order, is to train your staff. So if you're starting this off and maybe you don't have a lot of money, I was talking to Ben earlier today, and training your staff and understanding the psychology of these scams and understanding psychologically how to interact with the customers. This becomes important because, number one, it's not one of the most expensive things you'll do, but it's one of the most impactful. We spend a lot of time talking about controls that will generate alerts. Well, once you get the alert, it's now going to be a person talking to that customer/victim. And so this training is your last line of defense to basically get that person to keep the money in the bank. And those would be the very two things I would do if you're a financial institution and you're going, oh, I don't really have a lot of money, I don't have a lot of approvals yet. See if you can get those two, because you'll see impact. Then we move along, back up toward the top there, having an anti-scam strategy. This is important. Make it written so it's defining what you're doing, and you can share that with your C-suite and your staff. It becomes quite important. The next one is having anomalous controls to actually detect that there's scams. And we know when it comes to fraud, it's much easier to identify the anomalies than it is when it comes to scams. And so it's a different set of controls you need to identify a scam transaction. The next point is to allow the customer to have choices in the controls. So as an example, when Zelle came out, it was turned on for everybody. My idea of customer controls would be to have it turned off initially and let customers choose that they want it. Once they want it, maybe they don't need it instant where it goes out 2 seconds later. If I'm sending my daughter some money, it's okay if she gets it tomorrow. So give customers choice in these controls. That's very important. And the final one on here is to add money mule management controls. Money mules is one of the primary reasons why we have fraud and scams. And so it's very important that every financial institution put a focus, number one, on new account opening. And I will tell you, with Gen AI, it makes it much more difficult to defend new accounts being opened, because it's so easy to create driver's licenses and the documents and all that stuff. So it's a real serious effort. I also understand that when you talk about money mules, sometimes it's your existing customers. Sometimes it might be people coming in from outside the country, students here for a short period. So there's a lot of different personas of a money mule, but start with that online account opening. And then also have inbound anomaly detection. That's something new for most banks, but NACHA, which basically is the operating group for the automated clearinghouse transactions, is mandating that for ACH starting next year. So banks are already focusing. And what you see here, it's a combination of the sending and the receiving bank. And what's important is this is a journey. It doesn't just happen overnight, and you don't just get it done and move on to the next project. This will be continual, because the threats that we have are constantly evolving, and the psychology of these threats, we heard it yesterday about how the victims go through this and all the grooming. The bankers need to understand that, and things change, and that's an important part of this. So again, this is going to be a journey for banks. You'll be doing it, but it's going to be an ongoing thing, especially the training for staff, because you will learn as you do these interdictions what's working and what's not. Okay, the next thing has to do, I'm going to move over to the telco space, and here are 3 areas that I think are important. One is on international calls. I think they should be labeled. I know that when you do that, it's not an absolute thing, because there's a lot of ways the fraudsters can game the telco system. But be that as it may, I think that's something that should happen. We see it happen in many other countries, and the FCC has a number of documents out requesting comments, and I believe this is one of them. The other one is to be able to better detect the SIM boxes and phone farms. So this is a case where fraudsters are able to literally get a box and cram it full of SIM cards and be able to take that to be able to generate not only text messages, but also scam calls. And I was actually talking to one of the carriers yesterday, and they actually have identified ways where they can help to detect that. But again, the scammers are very sophisticated with these SIM boxes and SIM farms, so it takes even more technology to go after that. The third one more has to do with the phones, the mobile phones themselves, and the ability for both Apple and Google, who basically own the platforms, to open up the APIs to make it easier for third-party vendors to help come in and look at the calls and the text messages and provide more alerting. Now, to be fair, we saw some wonderful examples by Google yesterday about what they were doing, and I will applaud that. Those were some really good examples. But I think if we open up the APIs, there are a lot of other creative people out there who can help in that process. Okay, the states. I include the states because there's a couple things that they can do as well. Number one is a number of states already have laws for hold transactions, especially for senior citizens, and the ability for safe harbor. And so for financial institutions in those states, that is something that allows them under law to hold the transaction if they think it's suspicious for elderly and have a safe harbor. I would like to see more states do that because I think that's quite effective. The other thing I think states need to do is basically have regional law enforcement centers. We know that every police department cannot handle this. They just don't have the staff, don't have the training. I'm from California. Maybe there should be 5 regional centers within the state. Or if someone's from Montana, maybe Montana and plus 2 other states put together a regional center to help this, because the law enforcement is essential and we have to find a way to make it more efficient than it is today at the local level. The last thing I want to add here is that I noticed, this is something Ayelet brought to my attention, is the state of Minnesota has basically established a $5 million annual consumer recovery fund, so that if consumers in the state of Minnesota are scammed, there is this $5 million per year that's available for some level of recovery. So again, from a state level, that's not a control, but that's an innovative approach, and I wanted to mention that as well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So Ken, we heard from you last year at the conference, and please share with us what have you been up to in the last year with Stop Scams Alliance, and what are your recommendations for public-private partnerships?
Yeah. Well, Ayelet, thank you very much to GASA for the opportunity to speak to you all today.
Next slide.
Sorry? The next slide, right. I need to go to the next slide. There's my slide.
I got you.
Here you go. Thank you. So thanks to GASA for allowing me to speak today, and also to Amazon and GASA for putting on such a great conference. It's really a great event you guys are running. My background is in national security. I worked for the CIA for 33 years, first as an analyst, then as a manager, and then as an executive managing digital transformation for CIA's Analytical Directorate. My last job was at the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, and I was the Director for Information Sharing for the U.S. intelligence community. I've been a strategic advisor to companies like SAP and Oracle, and taught at Georgetown University. In early 2023, my life changed because my mom was scammed, tech support scam, and my eyes were opened to the scale of the problem facing the United States. It's just not my mom. Millions of Americans are being scammed each year. My instincts were to focus on prevention. After all, I learned in the intelligence community that it's always better to be left to boom. So Stop Scams Alliance is a nonprofit that focuses laser-like on prevention. We aim to create a coalition of tech companies, telcos, financial institutions, consumer groups, and government to raise our collective defenses, focusing on prevention. Some of our signature projects include working with Gallup, the nation's leader in public opinion research, to understand the nature of the threat. Gallup did a survey question for us in 2023, and in January we're going to launch the most comprehensive survey ever undertaken in the United States on scam prevalence. Some of the companies here in this room are supporting this project because measurement is so important. Good public policy requires good data. We've also written a number of op-eds, and we've made significant contributions to a variety of legislation in the last year. Most recently, I was asked to join the Wilson Center as a distinguished fellow. The Woodrow Wilson Center is one of the nation's foremost nonpartisan think tanks and public policy forums, and my appointment there reflects the recognition by the Wilson Center that the time has come to elevate the issue of scams. So, I just wanted to reflect on what a huge distance we've come since last year's GASA conference. It's really remarkable. Judge Pirro's strike force, sanctions from the Treasury Department, the largest asset seizure in U.S. history, the FCC's proposed rules for making it harder for criminals to spoof telephone calls, all very positive steps. 2025 was the year that the United States started to recognize the national security threat posed by cyber-enabled scams. A big shout out to the Aspen Institute for organizing an open letter to the congressional leadership that was sent 2 months ago. The letter says that fraud and scams have become a fast evolving national security threat. It was signed by 46 companies, including many of the companies in this room today. So corporate America is speaking out. Congress is speaking out too. Senator Grassley opened a recent hearing by saying, "We are under attack by transnational organized crime syndicates who are engaged in industrial scale fraud. Let me be clear," he said, "this is a national security crisis, and we're actually funding it with money stolen from our own pockets." Congress has responded and is cranking out legislation like crazy. By my count, at least 24 scam-related bills have been introduced in 2025. At least a dozen of these will set up an interagency task force to create a strategy to address the scam crisis. However, these bills show that we haven't yet decided who should be in charge of fraud policy. Are scams mainly a financial issue, diplomatic, defense, law enforcement? Who should take the lead? And keep in mind, just because companies in Congress are speaking about a new national security threat, that doesn't make it so. At the end of the day, the White House has to be on board. So let's look at a precedent. After all, the U.S. has encountered many national security threats over the years, and we have a playbook. For example, in the mid-'80s, we faced a surge in drug trafficking. We responded by doing three things: declaring the war on drugs a national security priority, appointing a White House-level coordinator at ONDCP, and making the proper investments. We've used the same playbook over and over again for ransomware in 2023, et cetera. However, in our current response to the scam threat, the White House has not yet spoken out about the national security risk posed by scams. We still can't answer the question who's in charge of fraud policy in the US. And in all of the bills that I just mentioned, I can't find a single dollar appropriated to respond to this new threat. So here's where we stand. Cyber scams are surging. The FBI's budget has been flat in recent years. In fact, they even got a cut in 2024. There's no new appropriations on the horizon. So what's wrong with this picture? And how do we start treating scams like the real national security threat that they are? So number one, I would say that the White House needs to announce that scams are a national priority. It's not a priority until it's announced. And I worked for many years in the executive branch, and it responds to direction, but only when told there's a new priority that they need to budget for. If it's an official priority, it'll get done. Number two, we have to decide who's in charge of fraud policy. In the United States, every national security issue has a coordinator at the White House. I've never heard of a national security issue that doesn't have a White House coordinator. I know my former colleagues in the executive branch are doing their best to within their existing authorities and budgets, but a cross-cutting issue like scams cannot be headed by any one department or agency. Personally, I think the Office of the National Cyber Director should play a role, since the scam threat is properly framed as a cyber-enabled attack, and cyber expertise will be key to mounting the proper defense. Third, we have to establish an information sharing hub. Let's face it, we're at war with foreign cyber criminals who themselves are organized and share information, so we need to get our information house in order. My favorite model is the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, which is a nonprofit authorized by law and is funded by the federal government and the private sector. NCMEC receives about $40 million a year in federal funding, and it serves as a data fusion hub and a center for training and education, and it works. We created a fusion center after 9/11 to fight counterterrorism, and that works too. We recently, in June of 2025, created the Healthcare Fraud Data Fusion Center at DOJ. That's what we do when we're confronted with a complex issue. So let's let 2026 be the year that we create an information fusion center for scams in the United States. I talked to Eileen Yap yesterday about the current number of national anti-scam centers, and the answer is about 12 around the world now. That's because they're so effective. Such centers enable a more comprehensive view of the threat, a faster ability to respond, and a hub for education and training. They're just so effective, the ROI is crazy. Part of our information fusion initiative should be to fix the confusing and ineffective reporting system for scams in the United States. In a recent gossip poll, about 5% of Americans said they didn't report because of shame, but the vast majority of people didn't report because they don't know how to, or it's too complicated, or they don't think it'll do any good. No wonder they feel this way, because here's a picture of what the reporting system looks like to victims today. It's a maze of possible places to report, and most people don't know which ones to pick. Just think of the advantages if we were to create an easy, standardized way for people to report being scammed. We'd improve our understanding of the threat picture, we'd be able to react more quickly, we'd actually save money because a consolidated business process would be cheaper and more efficient than our current process. And the only hang-up, I think, is bureaucratic inertia that's caused by lack of leadership. As soon as we start treating scams like a true national security issue, I have no doubt that we'll fix it. So to conclude, just taking these 3 steps, I think will probably cost some tens of millions of dollars, which is really peanuts in the scheme of things when you think about it. But we'll save billions and billions from leaving our economy and flowing overseas to transnational criminals. So what are we waiting for?
So last year, when Paul took the stage, there was not one dry eye left in the room. And Paul has been advocating for change across the industry with regards to sextortion crimes and other that are targeting teens. And we would like to hear from you, Paul. What have you been up to in the last year? You've done a lot. And what do you think is very urgent in this ecosystem?
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for inviting me back. Happy to be here again in DC. I'm Paul Raffile. I'm an Intel analyst, investigator, an arch nemesis of Meta. Nah, just kidding. We have a fun love-hate relationship. So last year I spoke at GASA DC and shared some of the emerging threats about financial sextortion scams, the most dangerous scam. And since then I've been continuing to raise awareness, accountability, and solutions, thank you, to curb this emergent crime. Fortunate to have had the opportunities recently to brief Interpol's Cybercrime division, as well as staff members from the United Nations, as well as the US Congress on this emergent threat. Recently partnered with Florida's state attorney's office in launching the nation's first law enforcement task force dedicated specifically to sextortion. Additionally, in the past year, my research has been cited in 3 major lawsuits against big tech and social media companies. Went live on 6 national news broadcasts across the US, UK, and Australia. I participated in the Hulu docuseries Hey Beautiful, Anatomy of a Romance Scam. You can watch it today on Hulu. And aside from that, focusing more on sextortion, helped participate in launching 8 documentaries. 2 in the UK are out now, 2 in Canada are out now, 1 is out in Germany, another one is coming out in Germany, and that's 6. The other 2 are top secret, but you'll hear about them next year, I'm sure. And so lastly, what I've been up to, well, that's basically it. I'll go into the slides. Okay, so what is a sextortion scam? Cyber criminals, financially motivated, have created hundreds of thousands of fake social media accounts across Instagram, Snapchat, and TikTok. They are pretending, catfishing, as pretending to be young women. They are friending hundreds of thousands of teenage and young adult men here in the US, and they are grooming them, essentially coercing them into a compromising situation. These criminals are, starting out with a normal conversation, turning it flirtatious, and then they're sending a nude photo to their target, hoping that the target reciprocates. The moment that happens, that's when the blackmail begins. The criminals say, hey, I've screenshotted all your images, I've screenshotted your entire friends list, your followers list, and unless you pay me $500 right now, I'm going to ruin your life, I'm going to get you kicked out of school, I'm going to make this compromising photo go viral, I'm going to send it to your friends, family, etc. It's a very heinous crime. The death rate is, the death by suicide is 1 per every 1,000 reported cases. So it is the most dangerous scam. We know who's doing this. We know who's behind the majority of these scams. They are cyber criminals operating out of West Africa. They're called Yahoo Boys. And they are using the same social media platforms to organize and recruit themselves. On Meta's Facebook, there were over 100,000 members across public Yahoo Boy groups where they were sharing these sextortion tactics, scripts, materials, and images to use. So as a recap, I'm not going to share everything I did a year ago, but just what happened in the past year. So 2025 is actually going to be the worst year on record, unfortunately. 50,000 reported cases of targeting minors this year. Let's put some perspective on that. Back in 2021, there were only 139 reported cases of financial sextortion targeting minors here in the US. 139, 50,000 cases in the span of 4 years. Teen deaths rose to 38 here in the United States, as well as 54 globally. And of course, there's significant underreporting. I believe there are probably at least a couple hundred cases that simply ended with a locked phone, shame, and embarrassment. That victim never told anybody, and parents are left clueless as to why their son is dead. During this past year, 5 Yahoo boys were extradited to the United States. That's not enough. There are hundreds or thousands of them doing this scam, and no platforms have been held accountable or liable in any way yet. So these are the deaths that we could have prevented if we implemented all the recommendations that were shared last year. Braden Bone left a suicide note earlier this year, I think in March. He told his mom, "I'm sorry, I'm scared, look in my phone, you'll find answers there. Please go out, please find who's doing this." His note left an action. We need to find the criminal that was doing this, tormenting these kids. Diane Torres, Levi, Massachusetts, 13 years old, died by suicide, gunshot wound, hunting rifle. I still don't even know how a 13-year-old's arm is that long to do that. Caleb Moore, 14 years old, Elijah Heacock, and Bryce Tate. 5 out of these 6, they were initially targeted on Instagram. A tale of 2 platforms. So I mentioned Instagram, I mentioned TikTok, and I mentioned Snapchat. Those are the 3 primary social media platforms that these criminals are using. Do we have any guesses as to which social media platforms might be represented by these charts? Which one is Snapchat? Someone says Snapchat on the right. Snapchat on the left. Well, that's right. This is Snapchat on the left. Snapchat actually made this a company-wide priority. They implemented a whole bunch of changes that were recommended in 2024, 2025, and the numbers of reported cases via Snapchat have gone substantially down, close to where they were in pre-2021 numbers. Over on the right side, do we want to guess what platform that is? Instagram? No, Instagram is much worse than that. TikTok, yes. So why the heck was there a big spike in TikTok in 2025? TikTok, oh.
Because of this.
Oh yeah, well no, because there's a gap, because why did it take a year and a half for it to displace from Snapchat to TikTok? So I don't think it's exactly correlated, but the reason why TikTok is now spiking in 2025 is earlier this year, they launched the ability in direct messages to share photos and videos. They did not have that feature before this year. And once they launched that feature, of course, the number of sextortion scams on that platform rose. So, WTF do we do now? I have about 35 recommendations, but I'm only allowed to share 3 today. So the first one involves social media. We know that in the vast majority of these sextortion cases, the primary source of leverage that these criminals have on the victims is that they have screenshotted the victim's entire Instagram friends list, followers list. They know where you go to school, they know all your friends, they search that list for your family members too by last name. And these kids are scared to block the criminals because of that. They think that they have to pay, they don't know what to do. They're scared that if they block the criminals, everybody on that friends list is going to get those compromising images. So here's a simple or urgent solution, whatever we want to call them today. How about we hide those teen followers lists by default across the board? Now, to be fair, Meta announced earlier this year that they are hiding those followers and friends lists from only accounts that they detect as potentially being sextorters. And of course, how did they get all these friends lists? So we know that's not really working. But I'm still seeing today victims saying they've screenshotted the entire friends list. On Meta's Facebook platform, there actually is the privacy setting to keep your friends list always private. So why do teens not have that same safeguard over on Instagram when it's being weaponized against them? The second thing also involves social media. Big surprise there. So last year there was a great big announcement from Meta rolling out teen accounts. One of the major features here was the nudity protection tool. This is on by default for all teens here in America as well as other countries with teen accounts. And what this is essentially an AI system that detects nudity in direct messages going to and from teen accounts on by default. Now, what the system does, instead of actually blocking nude images from being sent to or from teen accounts, it just blurs the image and that says, tap here to unblur the image. So Instagram knows, let's say a teen account, a registered 13-year-old, has just sent a photo via the front-facing camera, and whether that photo is going to another 13-year-old or an adult doesn't matter, that's illegal regardless. Why not just block or prevent those photos from being shared instead of having a pop-up that says send anyway or share anyway? That just seems like knowingly facilitating child sexual abuse material and spreading child pornography. So lastly, finally, third point is not about social media platforms. It's actually an announcement that I'm pretty excited about today. So the number one question that I get asked at the end of all these conference sessions is, okay, scary information, what can we do? Can we bring this information to schools, communities, our kids? And until now, I have not had a good solution to do that, and I've been referring you guys to all external sources. Very excited today to announce that I've been working with a small team, folks from Yahoo, Apple, universities, and we've put together what we think is an amazing training program for you all to bring this awareness, this education to schools, to communities, to sports teams to help protect the young people in your area and in your life. This presentation is called Navigating the Digital Storm. This will be freely available to everybody here. If you feel inclined to reach out to your local schools, where your teens go to school, sports teams, youth groups, etc., we're going to give you for free slides, as well as a facilitator's guide about how to talk about these different topics. And if you are interested in registering to receive this presentation for free, we have a landing page, a registration page that you can access today at thedigitalstorm.com. So feel free to register, and we'll send you that presentation in a few weeks. So wrapping up with a few final thoughts here, this is the largest blackmail operation in human history. It's a public safety emergency, but it's also a national security emergency too, as we heard. Yahoo boys have killed more American teens in the past couple years than ISIS ever has. These criminals are organized. We need to be too. That's why I'm thankful that events like this exist. So thank you for the time.
Okay, so we have a few minutes left, and some of you might have listened to Scam Rangers podcast. If not, I'm going to also give a shout out to that. These three distinguished guests have been on the podcast, and the question I always asked at the end of every episode is, okay, we heard everything, there's a lot to do. What are you hopeful about? So I would like to start with you, Ken, and ask.
So I'm hopeful that, as I talk to banks, that we see more banks going through the journey that I described. I think it's a real opportunity and an essential thing, and that's what I really want to see. The other thing, I don't know if I'm hopeful for it, but I clearly believe that states will become more active adding legislation around scam prevention, because we're not seeing it at the federal level. It's not a political comment, just a fact, and especially states like California, New York, and maybe Illinois and Colorado. So that's part of what I see happening next year.
What are you hopeful about?
I'm optimistic about the use of our AI to fight the bad guys. The U.S. has the best AI in the world, no doubt about it. And I know the bad guys are going to be attacking us with AI for sure, but I see signs already in this last year. There's been so many examples of companies starting to use our AI to fight them back. We saw an example yesterday of Google using AI on the edge to detect scam voice and text messages. Microsoft and Google both are now using AI to detect the characteristics of the tech support scam in the browser and taking that down. That's great. I see social dating apps starting to use AI to detect fake accounts. So we're starting to mount our defenses on the AI front, and if we could ramp this up, I think we can make a serious defense.
Thank you. And Paul, what are you hopeful about?
I'm not hopeful about anything, really, at this point. I guess I'll say one thing. So last year, the Senate voted 92-3 to pass the Kids Online Safety Act. The Kids Online Safety Act is the first major piece of online safety legislation in 20 years. It includes a duty of care for social media platforms that they could be held liable if they don't reasonably prevent foreseeable harms and risks. Now, this passed the Senate 92-3. The majority of state attorney generals encouraged the House to pass this legislation as well. Last year, about a few weeks before the deadline for the House to actually take this bill up and vote upon it, Speaker of the House Mike Johnson of Louisiana conveniently, graciously accepted a $10 billion donation from Meta Platforms to build an AI data center in Louisiana just weeks before that bill was due to be voted on in the House. So it was not voted on at all last year, despite the urgent need for it and the bipartisan support for it. So I'm hopeful that this year maybe we can do something about the Kids Online Safety Act and get it passed with the duty of care provision from the Senate.
Thank you. And I'll share that I'm hopeful about the amount of people here in the room who care about fighting this problem. So with everything that you learned and the urgent actions we have, I wanted to thank you all, and I hope you'll take it and implement. Thank you.